Hey everybody, so this is going to be the video over point of view and narration, and I'm going to be using the outsiders as the mentor text. Our two I can statements for this video are going to be I can determine what type of point of view is being used within the novel, and I can describe the protagonist using textual evidence. So our prompt is the book written in first or third person? And share an example from the text to show how you know. So a pretty straightforward question, but you do need to know some background knowledge before you get into this one. So what you need to know before you get into answering the prompt is you have to be able to make the determination, okay, what is the difference between first person, and then when we look at third person, what's the difference between limited and omniscient? So first person, we've kind of talked about a lot in class. We know that first person, for it to be first person, get my pen to write, you need to see I, me, or my being used a lot. That's how we're going to know that it's being written from the point of view of kind of our narrator. Now, third person is a little bit tricky, because it can fall into one of two categories. So you can have third person limited, where you know just one character. So you know everything about that one character, and they might reference other characters, but you don't really get to know their thoughts or what's going on in their head. So it might refer to one character as John did this, John did this, John talked with this, John had this feeling. So that would be third person limited. Now third person omniscient would be, get my pen to work, be everyone. So you'd be able to know everything about every character. If you had a book that was possibly switching from narrator to narrator, it would be a weird mix of first person because it's being written from that point of view, but it's also a little bit of third person omniscient because you're hearing and you're learning about all of these different characters. So the part that we're going to be looking at in today's reading is going to be coming from the beginning of the book. So, you know, the reason that we chose to do the focus areas in this order is because this kind of fits logically. Usually, the author is going to spend a lot of time at the beginning of the novel kind of setting up the point of view, making sure you know who the narrator is and all of that before they really get into the conflict. So we're going to be taking a look at a section where Ponyboy, who's our narrator, and we don't learn his name for a little bit, refers to kind of his life and describes himself a little bit. So, this is coming from the beginning of chapter 1. We're poorer than the Socias in the middle class. I reckon we're wilder, too. Not like the Socias who jump greasers and wreck houses and throw beer blasts for kicks and get editorials in the paper for being a public disgrace one day and an asset to society in the next. Greasers are almost like hoods. We steal things and drive old souped-up cars and hold up gas stations and have gang fights once in a while. I don't mean I do things like that. Derry would kill me if I got into trouble with the police. Since Mom and Dad were killed in an auto wreck, the three of us got to stay together as long as we behave. So Soda and I stay out of trouble as much as we can, and we're careful to not get caught when we can. I only mean that most greasers do those things, just like we wear our long hair and dress in blue jeans and t-shirts, or leave our shirt tails out and wear leather jackets and tennis shoes and boots. I'm not saying that socias or greasers are better, that's just the way things are. So already we have an idea of, and we can begin to answer that prompt, that we know that this is being written in the first person. We know that because we see I so many different times. So I reckon we're wilder. You can almost kind of say we because that's a personal pronoun, so Ponyboy's lumping himself in with that group. I don't mean I do those things. Derry would kill me if I got into trouble. So that lets us know that this is first person. We're going to read a little bit further and we can make some determinations about our protagonist here. So I could have waited to go to the movies until Derry or Soda Pop got off work. They would have gone with me or driven me there or walked along. Although Soda can't sit still long enough to enjoy a movie, and they bore Derry to death. Derry thinks life is enough without inspecting other people. Or I could have gotten one of the gang to come along, one of the 4 boys Derry and Soda and I have grown up with and consider family. We're almost as close as brothers when you grow up in a tight-knit neighborhood like ours and get to know each other real well. If I had thought about it, I could have called Derry and he would have come by on his way home and picked me up. Or 2-Bit Matthews, one of our gang, would have come to get me in his car if I asked him. But sometimes I can't use my head. It drives my brother Derry nuts when I do stuff like that, because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades and I have a high IQ and everything, but I don't use my head. Besides, I like walking. So we can begin to make some judgments about our character here. So we know that he's a greaser because he says, he belongs in that social group. So I don't do most things like greasers do. So when we think about that, we think of, maybe these hoodlums, like he says, that get into trouble. They hold up gas stations. So not the best people. But he says he doesn't really belong to that group. And he even kind of goes on a little bit later to differentiate himself from that group. So he says right here towards the end, it drives my brother Derry nuts when I do stuff because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades and I have a high IQ and everything, but I don't use my head. Now here, he kind of set himself apart because he does really well in school, which you wouldn't expect a hoodlum to do. So he's becoming kind of this really round character. But he says I don't use my head. And I don't read that in the way that he's saying I'm stupid. I think he says that more that, he's a little bit young and inexperienced, and he's got his brother Derry who very clearly cares for him because he doesn't want him getting in trouble. So that's been the video lesson over point of view and narration. I want you to try to think about those things and use those skills to kind of help break down not only, what point of view is your book being written from, but what are some determinations that you can make about your character? What are things, how can you say that they are a diverse or round character? So, best of luck.